Parshas Behalotcha, page 66, base. Okay. Now the Rebbe was the Maimer Reisi. He says he saw a pure golden menorah. There were 7 candles, and he said the Yidden are called natives. The whole Klal Yisrael is called menorah. Even though Yecheskel and what's his name spoke negative about the Yidden, here Yirmiyah and Yecheskel, but Chaya said it's menorah of kul, it's a pure menorah. And he says, what does it mean, miksha? Miksha means there's no top and bottom. It's just one piece of gold and you just knock it out. Okay, so now he says, Vine mitzvahs, we just learned a line or two of this. Mitzvahs kriyim gam kinedis. Not only is the neshama called ner Hashem nishmat sodom, but mitzvahs are also called nedis. Like it says, ner mitzvah v'teira od. The gam kiramach mitzvah says machivam de malkum. He says the 248 limbs together with the hands is gematria ner. Like it says, okay, v'inyen belosh in Torah. In Torah, this is where we're up to. Because in Torah, nikra ner, in Torah when it says the word ner, it doesn't only mean the flame. It means the keli shebetech Hashem v'apsila. Like it says, neres hamarocha. Neres hamarocha, when it speaks about, doesn't mean only the flame. It means the whole keli, the whole thing is called ner. V'gam shem and v'apsila atman kuriyim ner. Not only that, the oil in the wick is also called ner. Why? Like it said, but tives neres, when he prepared the neres, which means hatavet Hashem v'apsila, getting the wick and the oil ready. So he says like this: neshama is called ner, mitzvahs are called ner, but in Torah, ner includes everything: the oil, the wick, the keli, everything, the whole thing. V'inei neshama Yisrael nikra Hashem keli aner. Why, when the neshamas are called the ner, it refers to the keli of it. She big base kibul is a shemen v'apsila. Just like the ner, meaning the whole candelabra, so to speak, is what the keli to hold the oil and the wick. Kach neshamas im keli kibul l'kabel mitzvahs. The same thing, the Jews are the kelim to receive the mitzvahs, which is the shemen and psila, which is called ner mitzvah. So the Rebbe says like this: neshamas are called ner, and the mitzvahs are called ner. He said, but this that the neshamas are called ner, in addition to the fact that it means the flame also, but it refers to the keli that holds the shemen, the psila. That's all keli. That's all ner. The ner mitzvah v'teira od, that's more the oil itself. He says, kach neshamas. Okay, avol teira od. Sha'od eina ele b'shem od. When is od called od? When does fire give light? Aidei shenachas b'shemen u'psila. When the flame is connected to the oil and the psila. Now the Rebbe is explaining here. There's the Yidden, there's neshamas. There's mitzvahs and there's Torah. Ner mitzvah v'Torah od. So they all seem to be the concept of light, and that is the Neres Lahoyer, the concept of light. So he says, Neshamas Yisrael are the Kelim. The mitzvahs themselves are the Shemen and the Psila. And Torah Od, when does the Shemen and Psila give light? When the flame is connected to when the flame is burning on the Shemen and Psila. Ufi Ribe Hashem v'Psila. Based on the amount of oil and the size of the wick, Kachmeir Od. That's how much light you have. Shem apsila minam muvchad. If you have a good wick, you're going to have more light. And if you have a lot of oil, so then the fire is going to burn longer. So basically the flame is dependent on the wick and the shemen. The same thing, if you have a lot of wicks, like a Havdalah candle, right? Multi-wicked, your taste is going to be more or. What reveals the od? That's through the shemen and psila. In other words, through ner mitzvah, that he said ner is the shemen and the psila. So then you have Torah od, then you're going to have an abundance of light of Torah. Same thing, what is Torah? Like we learned many times, you have the mitzvah. Torah is the manual how to do the mitzvah. And we learned that many Maimorim that Rabbi used to ask, but if Torah is the manual, how could it be even greater than the appliance? Right. And here we're saying Torah, the Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam is even greater than the mitzvah, even though it's only explaining how to do the mitzvah. Kamei L'Moshe mitzvah Shabbos. That's the mitzvah Shabbos, yeah? The Torah says one pasuk, don't do malacha, basically. Yet Masechta Shabbos, there's a whole long, complicated tractate called Shabbos. Val mitzvahs Pesach yesh Masechtas Pesachim. Kachal derech Moshe kol HaTorah, the whole Torah is Ord v'Gili HaMitzvah. Keitzad is how you do it. So now the Rebbe is explaining like this. The Yidden are the ner, the keli. The mitzvah is the oil and the wick. And the Ord, that's Torah. Torah is the flame that gives light. Based on how much oil and wick you have, that's what type of light you're going to have. It's like in Gashmias, so it is in Ruchnias. Meaning, mitzvahs are not the Chochmah of Hashem. Torah is the wisdom of Hashem. Mitzvahs is what Hashem wants, the Ratzon of Hashem. And in the Ratzon Elyon is a level of Tainug, the enjoyment of Hashem. Like it says, Reach Nichayach Hashem, and Chazal say, Nachas Ruach Lefanai, Shamarti V'Naseh Ritzoni. Hashem says, I enjoy it. Reach Nichayach means a good smell, enjoyment. That is through Shamarti V'Naseh Ritzoni. That means when you have a mitzvah, which is the will of Hashem, and a Jew keeps the mitzvah, they're having the pleasure of Hashem in the will of Hashem. That the will of Hashem was kept. Tainug is based on the will, meaning what a person wants, you enjoy more. Like they say, you should always do something you enjoy doing, because then it's not a burden. If a person likes the work that they do, so then it's enjoyable, then it's not a burden. Because Tainug comes into that. Something against the will of the person, you get sad, pain, which is Hepach HaTainug. This will of Hashem in mitzvahs, is Tainug when the Jew does the mitzvah. Therefore, you have to do the mitzvah with Ivdos Hashem b'simcha. Why do you need simcha? Like it says, because all the curses, the Torah says, comes not because you didn't keep mitzvahs. Why? What's simcha? Simcha is galus hatainuk. Simcha reveals Tainug. Because, in other words, Tainug itself, generally speaking, is very personal. You enjoy something, it's more by yourself, to yourself. Tainug is not visible to somebody else. When you have Simcha, when you're doing something you're enjoying and you're happy from it, the Simcha reveals the Tainug. So therefore, it says, Ivdos Hashem b'simcha. A person has to serve Hashem b'simcha, because when a Jew does mitzvahs with simcha, that reveals openly the tainug, the pleasure of Hashem that he has in the mitzvah. Shatainug bali de gili, az nel de v'nisava simcha b'sgalus alev. Then you reveal the level of tainug. Therefore, chol mashi yesh gilu tainug yisir, the more pleasure you have, the more sasa sameach yisir. Upirish merev kol. Now, what is the merev? It says, "Tachat shelavadas Hashem lakacha b'simcha v'tuv levov merev kol." What does merev kol mean? Ein apirish mikol tainug elam hazeh bilvad. It doesn't mean more than that you have more simcha in Hashem than the world. Ki zeh pshita. That's for sure. Sharei kol tainug elam hazeh, because all the pleasures of this world is only the pselas, the sediment, the junk, what comes from shviras hakelim. In other words, physical enjoyment comes from the junk, the pselis of the malachim that created this world. And he quotes the Gemara. L'chein Omer Azal al Rabbi Akiva shayakuf chaf milin. He was 120 mil is less than 4,000 feet. It was 120 mil away from Krach Gedul Shoremi, from the big city of Rome. Shama Kalakriya. When he saw the Gemara at the end of Makkos, when the Rabbi Akiva was going with Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yeshua, and they came and they heard the whole commotion from Rome. And what happens? Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua Bachel, they started crying. Rabbi Akiva Sochak, and Rabbi Akiva laughed. They said to him, why are you crying? Why are you laughing? So why are you crying? He said, because look how powerful Rome that destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, look how powerful they are. So Rabbi Akiva said, that's why I'm laughing. What did he say? If the sinners get it, this wealth, how much more? So I say the same. So this tainuk comes even to the sinners, but that comes from the junk of the malachim, the garbage of the malachim. They tell a chassid once came to in the yesteryears. A chassid once came to a beautiful city in Moscow or Leningrad, whatever it was, and he sees all big. He says, wow, the malach really went to the bathroom here. Because it comes from the junk of the malach. You know, wow, he really went to the bathroom here. That there's no grass down here that doesn't have a mazel from above that hits it and says to grow. And the mazel gets its nourishment from the 70 sodim in charge of the countries. What that they get from Shmori Efanim, from the junk of the Pselas. In other words, like this, the mazel makes the Gashmias to happen. The mazel, he says, gets from the level of the Ayin Sodim. The Ayin Sodim get from Shmori Efanim, so you can and from there comes all the pleasures of this world. So he says like this, when the Pasuk says, that all the curses come upon the Jewish people because they didn't serve Hashem b'simcha v'tuv levav, mereiv kol. Mereiv coming from the abundance of Gashmias. He said that has to mean more than that. Because tainug of Gashmias, if you realize, comes from junk. It's a junky tainug. It's a, like we said many times, Rabbi writes in the Maimer, there are different levels of pleasure. You have pleasure from eating and drinking. Okay, that type of stuff. He said, it's mamish like a behemoth. It's animalistic, it's not human. Then you have a more refined type of pleasure, music. Music is much more refined pleasure than fressing like pigs. And then you have, above that, is tainug of doing a chesed. The people that, tainug from midas. There are people that enjoy doing somebody a favor. They put you to enjoy it. It's also tainug. It's more refined than music. Then you have more greater than that is you have the simcha. People enjoy intellectual things. Believe it or not, there are people that enjoy intellectual things. And then the highest level is tainug in alukus, which is even higher than seichel. So he said there are different levels of tainug. So he says it can't mean only made of kol, even though, by the way, the Arizal says, the Alter brings on in Tanya, that the Arizal says, he doesn't say, so like the Arizal, right, but the Arizal says, what does it mean, exactly what the Alter is saying here, that Hashem brings all the curses because you have more simcha from Gashmias than from Ruchnias. Doesn't say you don't have simcha and Ruchnias. Mirov kol, you have more pleasure from Gashmiastic pleasure than simcha from Alukus. Ve'ein arech lepnimis hachayis, which is ziv hashchina. Hamizgal b'ganei mit tzadikim, that tzadikim yeshu nenim ziv hashchina. Well, Moshe Gan Eden, Ruchniistic pleasure, is a much greater level than the physical pleasure of eating and drinking or the worldly things. And the Gemara says, mutter the ladaina, it's worthwhile going to Gehenna, and then you come to Gan Eden. If he should call Yisuri Gehenim, he says like this, the tainug of Gan Eden is so great, all the torture in hell, so that in Gehenim, that only comes from Ziv HaShechina. Because if ever it's a get, how much kokach tainug godel b'shav hashmam ha'pselis, kolshkin sheyum shech tainug godel, v'agalis niglas einig ha'elyon from the Ziv HaShechina. Okay? So the Alter Rebbe is explaining over here that because mitzvahs are the will of Hashem, and in the will of Hashem, Hashem says, it's my pleasure that you do mitzvahs. So therefore, when a person does a mitzvah, they have to have simcha. Why is simcha so vital? Because simcha reveals the tainug. When you're happy, it shows that you're having enjoyment from something. That level is vital in the observance of mitzvahs. It says, because if tainuga elam haza, what they are, how much more so that it's worth going to Gehenim just to get the ruchnias to tainug. And by the way, I don't know what Alter Rebbe was going to say, but in Gan Eden, the tainug is only from Ziv HaShechina. And the tainug of mitzvahs is from the essence of the Shechina, not the ray of the Shechina, right? Even Gan Eden HaTachton, that it says it's worth going to Gehenim, Kolshkim Gan Eden HaElyon, which is L'mayla Gan Eden HaTachton, the more pleasure of Gan Eden HaElyon is much, much greater than the pleasure of the lower Gan Eden. To the extent, Shetzarach Litvul B'Nar Dinor LeGan Eden HaElyon. There's a mikvah up there called Nar Dinor, it's officially fire, Abisi Ruchnias. It says when the neshama goes from lower Gan Eden to higher Gan Eden, they have to have the level of mikvah to purify themselves from the lower level of Gan Eden to be able to have the pleasures of the higher Gan Eden. In other words, it says it's worth going to Gehenim even for the lower Gan Eden. And you can imagine the pleasure of the higher Gan Eden, that you even have to go to the mikvah. And between every level, yesh bechinas nar dinor bein zelos adrei mamaylis. You have to constantly get rid of your earlier level, because mikveh, the concept of tefillah, tibul, tefillah, is a letters bittul. So the concept of a mikveh, simply it means, by the way, you have to be completely submerged in the water. That means you're submerged in the Mei Hadasa Torah, in the holy waters that purifies the person. But conceptually, mikvah is a level of bittul from the earlier level to come to the higher level. That's why you even have a spiritual mikvah, Nar Dinor. It's not neshamas getting undressed and going into toiling in the hot mikvah over there, doesn't make sense. But it means the higher level is so much greater, the lower level gets in the way of the higher level, like Bavli and Yerushalmi, right? You have to fast to forget Bavli. So therefore, he says, Chachamim have no peace, not in this world, not in Olam Haba. And that's what we say, Kedoshim b'chol yom aluchas salam. Kedoshim, the Holy One, it's an Ato Kodesh. Kedoshim refers to Neshama Sheshem Aliyah Sela. Kedoshim b'chol yom aluchas salam means it's continuous. So the neshamas are constantly elevating higher and higher and higher. And he says, that's why Chazal say, the last mission of Shas, Hashem's going to give every tzaddik 310 worlds. That says, because lost love, in order to get this pleasure of Elokus, a neshama which is a creation, yesh mi'ayin, cannot get this tainig on its own. Hashem has to give him the level of Shai Olamis. What's the cheshbon Shai Olamis? Because 613, and 7 mitzvahs rabbanan, 620, kesed. So kesed, chav tafresh, is 620. So Hashem is going to give now half of the 620, which is Shai Eilemis, 310 worlds. L'chein otzachli is Shai Eilemis, which are malim im helam acher elam. He says, okay. He says, the tainug is so great, Hashem has to give 310 olamis, helam, concealment. The tainug is so great, Hashem has to put 320 level of concealment that they can even handle that level of tainug. And he says, why? Because there's knei chachma, knei bina, twice kana, acquire is shin yud, that comes from chachma, bina, whatever this apprentice is, whatever.
310
worlds, which he says that's chacham and bina, alpayim shan mekad matei leilam, and okay, that's all depends, whatever. That's where the neshama doesn't want to come down, but then it doesn't want to leave.
Right, but it's such a catering of the panel.
But then, that's all ziv hashchina. When the neshama comes down and is doing a mitzvah, like it says in a yom yom, it's worth for the neshama to come down 70, 80 years to do one favor, one mitzvah, basically. So then you connect to the essence.
Why did the neshama doesn't want to come down? Does the neshama know that when it's coming down?
Yeah, but it's used to the Gan Eden sun. Doesn't want the cloudy this world. In simple English, the purpose of life is not to be on vacation. Yeah, vacation is enjoyable, so to speak. I don't know why, but it's supposed to be enjoyable. Yeah, and then you come, but then you have the reality that it's not what it's all about. So against your will, you come home, so to speak. But you realize you have to come home because you got to work, you got to, function.
When you're home, you appreciate it.
Okay, Kitzur, mamish the last line of page 66. Shamis Yisrael Nikir Ker, Ner, because of the Kalim, the Shem mitzvah is called Ner mitzvah, and Torah is the or, the fire that's in the wick, and so Bruchnius, mitzvah, Saratz, and Alien, they have Chain Tzarchan Lasa, mitzvah, B'simcha, Gilu, to reveal the pleasure, has to be Rabbi Kiva Sachak, because it's worth going into all Gehenim to come to Gan Eden, and therefore it has to be Shai Elimis, to be a Keli, to receive that Tainug, and okay. So he says now like this, Page Lamed Al Reis Gimel. That's what the Torah says, Meirav Kol. It doesn't stop there, the pasuk. It says Meirav Kol. So he says it can't mean simply just some gashmistic pleasures, because gashmistic pleasures come from the junk of the malachim. And here you're talking about super great levels. What does it mean? Pirish mikol mini ein gadrei mamailis. He says, Meirav Kol, he says, not the pleasures of this world, the pleasures of Gan Eden. That you don't serve Hashem with simcha, like the simcha of Gan Eden, meaning simcha atzma is even the mile from the shay'elim halolu, that it's not in it. Okay? In other words, as he's going to explain, Gan Eden is ray of the Shekhinah. This is pleasure from the essence of Hashem. So he's saying, mitzvah are the will of Hashem, that the einig is in, which is the ma'alim megeder ishtaushus. That's the level of ayin l'rasa elukim z'losach. Gan Eden is nanim is v'shchina. Then there's a level of, like he says, Einu Elyon, that says about that level, Ayin Loirasa Elokim Zulosech. That's a level that there's no nivra, and neshama can't handle that level at the present. Yet when a person does a mitzvah, that's what they reach.
Problem is that the talent of this word is cash.
Yeah, action.
You feel it.
You see, only this parentheses goes, man, 1 second. It goes all the way to the next column. 3 lines from the end of the column. So he says, "Ain't it just tainug of mitzvahs itself? And mislabesh b'shum geder hasaga, rak only this level of tainug that doesn't get blocked through the 3 tanailamis. It as it is unadulterated, so to speak." That's too great, but that level comes down in the level of mitzvahs atzmon, and that's the keli for the tainug elyonahu. In other words, mitzvahs are the ultimate level of the actual tainug, not the reward of the mitzvah that you get in Gan Eden, which is only ziv hashchina. You have the essence of elokus. It just says, okay, it's to be continued.
Yeah.